Today we have one of our good friends here. His name is Nazeh. I've always known him as Nas. So Nas, I'm gonna let you say your own last name here.
My full name is Nas Mirizadeh, but yeah, everybody calls me Nas.
Everybody calls him Nas,
Yeah.
Nizzy Nas. So we met him because he was a bartender at one of our favorite restaurants, Eunice. If you live in Houston, you might know Eunice. They brought some Cajun cooking to Texas. And we ate there at the bar, and he was always took really good care of us, enough to where I felt like we became friends, and we started following each other on social media. So he's been watching the podcast since we started. He sees all of Sean's, comments on education and how sometimes formal education isn't always the route to go depending on what you want to do. So he is a school teacher full-time. He is now in the admin side, and he is here today to tell us about how he got started, how he got into teaching, and then we're going to go into Sean wanting to disrupt the education system and his thoughts on the education system too.
A little bit, and then just to get some ideas too on how the education system actually works, from behind the scenes.
So you even said right before we started that you had a lot of takeaways just from watching this podcast.
Oh yes, and by the way, congratulations! It's been I've been following since from the beginning, and just the speed that you're moving is very incredible, and the action you're taking. So
That's all Sean, not me. I'm just here for the ride.
you definitely add the pizzazz to the personality. But
She's got the talent.
What a great pair! I love that.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. Thank you so
you for
much.
having me.
So I want to hear from you. What made you become a teacher? Because I see so much passion watching videos of you with the kids, because you do elementary education.
Yes.
How you were with the kids, 5 and 6-year-olds, you're amazing. And I know you're going to be, or now that you are a father, you're an amazing father too, I'm sure. What made you choose education?
It was something that I couldn't get away from. So my mother was a teacher. My father was a teacher. They actually met at the school they taught in. And I remember being a kid and in our village that we grew up in, called Turabat. And my mom used to take me to her class, and I was 5 years old, and I would see kids reciting poetry, and one of them was my cousin, and then I recognized him. And then of course in the family, they all talked about education and their kids and their families, and so you were constantly around it. During the time in the early 90s, I'm from Azerbaijan, and there's a war going on between the country besides it. It's Armenia, so we've been in war for since I was born. And then
Still in war.
it recently had ceasefire currently, but there will always be turmoil. It's just that same thing with Israel-Palestine type of thing. You're growing up to not like that, and you're taught that too. And so it's just you have this sense of pride, of nationalism. And then, the first thing I wanted to be was a soldier, like to fight for my country. Yeah. And then as I learned more, I understood why I was in that system. But the war came to the home front. And I remember my dad, I was about 6 years old, and he came home and he's a character. He told my mom, make sure the kids are dressed nice. We're leaving tonight. And I didn't know what that meant. And my uncle came with a tractor. He just said, get him out of here. And then we were bordering with Iran, as you mentioned earlier, and the goal was to get out of there, to go to Iran, to cross the Araz River. So once you get around the river, you're protected. The Iranian soldiers would protect us. So that was our goal. And I managed to be with my cousins, and I got away. One of my cousins, he grabbed a horse, and he grabbed a donkey, and I was the younger one, and he said, why don't you get on the horse, I'll get on the donkey, and then we'll just go on top of a mountain. The farther we get. So by this time, you'd see people running, you'd see missiles coming.
But your parents aren't with you at this time.
My parents aren't with me because they entrusted me with my uncle and then my cousin.
How scary?
Well, it wasn't scary because I didn't understand what was going on. I didn't fathom these things because I saw soldiers all the time. I saw gunshots all the time. So but I didn't realize what was happening until later on as an adult. So we went up to the mountain and we looked outside the mountain, and you could see my whole village. And then the other village was my mom's village, and you could see the missiles coming, and it looked like a fireworks type of thing. So like as a kid, I'm just thinking that, and I'm not thinking of the ramifications of me never returning back to this place. And I remember with my cousin that we were very angry, like we're gonna get him back, like mentality. We moved to the city, and the city meaning our own country. So once you go to the border of Iran, you go to Baku, which is the capital of Azerbaijan. So we moved there. We also felt a lot of turmoil because our own people, they called us a term called gatskan, which in English means a runaway, as if you ran away and you didn't fight, and now you're a burden to us. So we didn't have a place to live.
How young would kids fight in that country? I'm sure it's not 18.
So there's a military service you have to do, and it's
Okay.
at 18.
Okay.
And if you choose to go to college, you can go back at 23.
Okay.
So a lot of parents want their kids to go to college because they're
avoid
more
that, yeah.
they're a little more developed by 23 to go there. And I got into trouble later on because as an American, when I went back, I never served it, so I almost got arrested. So in the city, I was lucky enough to find my family, and my dad, my mom being a teacher, they put me to school early, and so I was 4 years old when I went back home, but then I continued school here. But they said my dad didn't have any connections in the city, so I had to go back to daycare again. So I wasn't allowed to go to school again. As we're going to school, it was very much, our school was very much nationalistic. Formerly they had a picture of Stalin. Then they had the current president, who's was a dictator for a long time, and then his son becomes a dictator. So we had to, give allegiance to them. But school was corporal punishment that was there, but we really valued our teachers and we really respected them, and they were part of our community. They knew our parents. I knew to behave well. I knew to be obedient. Just try to appease my teachers. But the rigor was very high. But to me, that was normal. You had to recite poetry at third grade. It was big, long pages, and then we'd go home and then we recite over and over and over and over again. And
So homework very early on.
so homework very early on, yeah. But there was much of a respect, and if you didn't, like, I remember complaining to my parents that, oh, this teacher, she had this technique. She would grab your ear and then fold it and then pull you.
I had one of those in third grade.
You
She
did?
would, she would hit us with rulers.
Okay.
She actually got in trouble and fired from that too, but she would grab people by their ear.
And in modern education, I don't believe in that whatsoever. I think there's a way to get kids to do what you ask them to do. You just have to gain their trust. But this was traditional way. So fourth grade ends, and then my dad, he spoke multiple languages, and he got a nice job at BP. And he was a translator because there's a lot of oil companies in Azerbaijan because it is a oil haven. And any American unit that knows about Azerbaijan is in the oil business. So he played this lottery that they asked him to.
Okay, yeah.
It was called the Visa Lottery, I believe. The Visa Lottery.
10,000 people a year get it or whatever the magic
Yes,
number is.
absolutely. And that was to integrate United States with people from all over the world. And it really worked. And it was changed my life forever.
My best friend, Sarah, her husband's from New Zealand, and she talked to me about this lottery thing. And she's like, yeah, you never heard of that? I'm like, no, I've never heard. I had no idea they did this. But they want to have a certain amount of people per country and kind of keep it, small, so it's not like waves of people coming in. But that's
Absolutely.
been around for years and years. And people who are, even in New Zealand, like everyone wants to win this lottery.
Oh, yeah,
to get
it's a
in.
big deal. And I think later on I found out that a lot of people approached my father and try to pay him off to come to the United States. And they even talked him out of it, saying that
Like with work or just other family friends?
just people around, people who have the capability to come to the United States. First off, it's uncharted territory. There's a different language. They're not of your kind. That's what we're thinking. And they've told my dad, you're gonna go there and you're gonna mop floors. And he had a lot of respect. He was a teacher, and he won the Teacher of the Year in the nation's level. So respect is a big thing in our culture. And so they try to talk him out of it, that I'll pay you not to go. But
okay.
he said, I just want my kids to be free.
So how many of you guys were there?
All immediate family, older brother, me, middle child, and youngest sister, mom and dad.
Okay, so there's 5 of you guys. So he plays the lottery, and it sounds like he wins.
Yes, that's why we're in front of you.
And you were 12 years old at this point.
I was turning 12, and I remember it was my birthday, and a lot of people came. So I thought they all came for my birthday. Like, wow, so much. But they were just coming to see us for the last time because we were.
And did you want to go? Were you excited to leave, or were you
I
scared?
was.
Or did you hear bad things? about
My
the US?
my vision of America was obviously New York, lights, lots of lights. Hollywood is what you see. It is the promised land. It is someplace that you never think. I honestly had to pinch myself as a kid. So I remember being in fourth grade, and my dad came to my class, and he said, do you have any work for him, any assignments? Because we're going to be moving. And my dad left, and the teacher asked me, so where are you going to be moving to? And I looked around and I said, America. And the whole class clapped and everybody was jumping up and down and then
Yeah, like you got the golden ticket
the
from Willy
golden
Wonka.
ticket, if you will. Yes, absolutely. And so that was fourth grade. And so in the beginning of fifth grade, where September starts with us, I was supposed to go to fifth grade over there, but then we moved and we got here around September and looking on the school, we moved into Southwest Houston. And I remember.
Did you guys get to choose where you came? Like, how did you know where to go?
Great. Let me backtrack a little bit. And then you asked the question why I became a teacher, and I went into a big story. The reason I became a teacher, when we were refugees in the city, even though my dad and mom were teachers, we lived in a classroom because the government didn't have a place for us to live. So we moved into a classroom. We broke down the walls with me, my brother, and my dad. And we just went into a school, and it was a great school. It was a school dedicated to create Olympians, but they go to school there. But they had extra classrooms, or it was just empty. So all the refugees piled on, and it became like a refugee haven, like the projects. That's where all the kids go. I remember going to school, and I didn't want anyone to follow me because I lived there, and I would try to hide.
And this is here in the U.S.
This is in Azerbaijan.
Okay, got it. So before you came, okay.
Before I get. So when we come to U.S., lots and lots of culture shock. I remember one of this is simple, but we landed from the airport and one of the oil guys from my dad's job, they met with us and they said, you should go back. The ticket you got is actually round trip and you're not going to be able to survive in this country. It's not that easy here. You have to work. And he just gave us a few of the laws that we must follow. And
did anyone speak English at this point?
My dad was an English teacher. Okay, so yeah, that's what but his English was British English.
You spoke
I spoke
English
no English whatsoever.
Okay.
I spoke Turkish and a bit of Russian because those are the bordering countries and it's taught in our schools. But mainly I spoke those because I watched Turkish and Russian television.
Okay.
That's just your childhood because they have better TV. So the cartoons you watch, you learn their language. And that's how I spoke English, actually. I learned it from The Simpsons. And my dad.
Our son found the Simpsons a couple weeks ago, and he wants to watch The Simpsons everything.
It is, and obviously I didn't know the content, the jokes, but subtitles, words, you hear it, you see it, you hear the pronunciation. So I picked up English quick. My dad said in America they have 12 years of school. In our country we had 11. So he said, you're supposed to go to fifth grade, but since they have 12 years, they're gonna have one extra year, so it's best to put you in sixth grade. And obviously I was scared. I'm coming to a country, I don't speak the language. I don't have any friends. I don't know how the curriculum is. And so I was really worried going to the classroom. And a lot of people thought I was Hispanic. So, going to a school that's low economic status, you're mainly going to see Hispanic and African-American students. So I was the Hispanic. So the teacher's like, he doesn't speak English, talk to him. And so this girl starts talking to me in Spanish. And
are you in ESL class?
I'm in
regular
one
class.
ESL class, but everything else is regular. So they do provide ESL classes, or you have regular English. So if you're an ESL speaker, you go to that class, and they'll teach you phonemes, how to read, how to comprehend. Yeah. But it's mainly like the blends, TH blends, and what, why, the why.
So you're sitting through the other classes like, I don't know what the hell's going on at this point.
No, actually no. I thought this is the stuff that I learned in second grade. I walked into a math class, they were doing a problem, and I learned that in second grade. This was sixth grade in the United States. So it gave me a lot of ease that I think I could do this. And then boom, 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 the kids were trying to understand. It was define X, 3 plus X equals 8. What is X? I was like, oh, this is second grade math. So I solved it.
They were like, he's a genius.
And the teacher, and I don't speak a lick of English, and she's looking at me, she's like, wow, this is really good. And so I became at ease at that. And then I had a few of the kids walk me to the other classes and show me my schedule. And I remember thinking it's a long day. It's because we used to go to school back home from 8 to 12. And so here I am from 8 a.m., 7 a.m. to 4. I was exhausted.
Is it 8 to 12 all the way through the 11
It gets
years,
longer
or?
as you go, but mainly so because they have two sessions. You have the session of 8 to 12 or 12 to 4. So some kids go in the morning and they leave during the day, and then the other kids join. And I think the teachers stay all day.
So once you do the 8 to 12, what does usually someone do outside? Do you all go straight to work after that if they're a young man, or how does it work? With the rest of the day, with the rest of the day.
Oh, absolutely. Oh, yeah, they go home. Yeah. And there's a lot of job losses back in home. And, I went home recently and we went to a couple parks and And I was asking my aunt, like, why are there so many men out here just hanging around? And she's like, there's just no jobs around, you know? So there's a lot of, it's really difficult. And this is one of the reasons why I love America. Is when I went back home and I would ask, how do people get jobs here? They said, well, you have to pay a job. So let's say you want to join a company and let's say somebody wants to join Gentry Kelly Cosmetics. I have to pay a year amount of what I'm going to make in a year. And hopefully I can get a position here. And in the next 5 years, I can make that money back. So that's how the system works there. And I was really flabbergasted. I said, you work for income? They're like, no, back home. That's just how it is. You want somebody to work for you, you have to pay me, and then I could use that money to pay you back, and then whatever. Yeah, I know, I understand. So it's great to be in America.
So that brings up a question of what you were saying earlier about the school schedule. So they're half a day of what, I mean, you're in grade school,
Yeah.
like K through 5 or whatever. Half of a day that we spend in America, and you're learning twice as much. What do you see in comparison? Is it because y'all are just balls to the wall the whole time that you're there? You're constantly working? Do you cut out PE? Like no lunch breaks? I mean, what is the difference between school back home versus what you're doing in elementary school?
I think the school back home, it's just the education is your only escape. You know, it's you have to go to school if you want anything. There is a lot of respect for teachers. Teachers are held in one of the highest regards, comparison to that of doctors.
Oh, it's like a doctor and attorney.
And with that, there's a lot of it's hard to get to that position, you know. And obviously, it's not that easy in the United States as well. But
do you feel like in the class, what makes the class day so much shorter over there than here? Do you feel like it's like just excessive do nothing stuff that makes the day just spread out longer?
And I think what I believe is that the workday in the United States is it's 8 hours, so the kids have to be 8 hours. So back to your question, what did the kids do? We just went home, and then the community raised you, the neighborhood raised
I was about to ask. They're just like, go to the park and hope for the best.
Yeah, and
don't get in a white van with no windows.
I was in gymnastics back home, and because that school was a Olympic creator, they had boxers, they had all kids from around the world come to that school. So I was exposed to athletes, and I would just hang around them. And then I was in gymnastics. I mean, I had Russian coaches that would beat us, but their goal was to get to the Olympics. And some of the kids did, like, because it was just, that's your only way out. That's your, and you have to take it serious. And so as young kids, we know what we want to do with our lives early on.
So that's really a big cultural difference between what you see in America versus what you see here.
Yeah, but it kind of goes to show you that he came here and he said, what I was doing in the second grade is what I'm doing in the sixth grade.
It is, and
all 4 hours a day. So it goes to show you that
our kids are capable. Our kids are very capable, and all
saying.
Kids are capable. However, the challenges of the United States is that in my country we were all the same. Every kid was the same. We had the same religion. We had the same mindset. It was easier to take those kiddos and grasp their curiosity and put a lesson in front of them. Whereas here, you know, you have kids from all over the world. You have kids from different backgrounds, and then the more we want them to have a normal line of a gap of learning to be made smaller, it's just more difficult. And that's one of the reasons why Finland does so well. And obviously, and we could talk more about that, how different their education system is compared to ours of the United States. And they're listening to teachers. We're not.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you. You guys don't have, from what I've heard, because I have some teachers that work here at my office, you don't really have any sort of flexibility or not much in your curriculum.
Absolutely. And the public schools definitely don't. Yeah.
And especially the girl I introduced you to upstairs, who was a teacher, she started in 2020. She was a history major, and she was all of a sudden told, because of everything was changing, you know, with race and everything you were allowed to say. They were like, well, you can't teach this, and critical race theory or whatever it was. I forgot what she said. But everything she had learned, they said, nope, you can't do that. You have to say this instead. And she said it was so incredibly frustrating because she was being told what to tell people, even though it wasn't our true history.
Exactly. And we could go back all the way in history, why education is the way there is. You know, at first, originally in the 1600s, it was more about smart people gathering together and sharing ideas, local colonies just gathering the village kids, and one person would teach the kids or babysit the kids all day, and it was different age ranges, and whoever had a kid would do that. And then and in Europe, same style. And then around in the 1800s, after the Napoleonic Wars, Prussia was at the losing end to France many times, and then they decided that we gotta end this. We have to be able to build soldiers from early on, and so they were the ones that came up with the idea of it has to be age based. All students with their age go, and that's still the same. So you have to be 5-year-old in America to go to kindergarten. And then they were the ones who decided to put science in one class, group them, math in one class, in different subjects. And their intended goal was to create great soldiers, and they did. They were creating obedient rule followers who respected authority. And then a gentleman by the name of Thomas Mann in the 1800s traveled to Prussia, and what he saw was fascinating. And he said, wow, this is really great. The idea of all kids in one subject moving to another
Creating
subject.
more structure, yeah.
More structure, exactly.
More obedience.
More obedience. And he brought that back. And this is when the late 1800s and the Industrial Revolution is taken off. And there are men like Morgan and Rockefeller and Carnegie and, great entrepreneurs who really see that there's not remember, this is after after slavery got abolished between the 13th Amendment. So they needed workers. So they decided that let's adopt a system, and they funded this system.
Sean has a quote. We're trying to create that you always say, we're trying to create a nation of workers, not leaders.
No,
Rockefeller said that. And that stems from that initial funding of that idea. And that idea took off, and it was fantastic.
You don't want to teach them too much.
For
you don't want to
age,
give them too much flexibility. You want to keep them,
obedient, and then also just keep them where they're happy enough. And that really worked fantastic for the Industrial Revolution, because that's when we needed workers. That's when
all the factory workers.
Exactly. Yeah. And there was a assembly line for factory workers, and we needed that. And it really is one of the reasons why America became number one country in the world, because we had a growing nation, an incredible workforce. And that continued on until the World War II. And then after that, since that time, we've never had a drastic, radical change in education reform. And it's been the same. But
until now, with the internet. I think
internet's amazing. Yeah, absolutely. And me being in the forefront of internet.
I think some people think I'm like anti-education, but I think education is huge. But I just think, like you said, it hasn't been reformed in so long. And look at all the stuff that's happened since, 1920s or 1930s, especially with the technology. I mean, access to information is you can have even more so now today with AI. So you don't have to sit there and memorize all this stuff.
And that's why Montessori schools are good too. My best friend took her kids, they were homeschool / Montessori school. They were able to learn at their own pace, kind of back to what you said it was like in the 1400s or long time ago. And that kids were taught for what they would gravitate towards or what they were most interested in.
And
that type of system was what Sean
They do that in Finland.
Kind of. I think you can go a step further though, and I really only think you need honestly, the 8 to 12 thing was probably
obviously efficient.
Yes. And so reading, writing, math, like just some basics, right? To just understand super basic subjects. But outside of that, I don't think you really need much more. Or they're lacking a lot more, and they just make you sit there
for realistic real life.
Yeah, they make you sit there for 8 hours a day, and then you kind of get stuck where you don't have enough skills when you graduate high school.
Skills is the key word. Yeah. And ultimately character, because we've noticed. Now I'm in the leadership now. When I hire people, I just declined someone from a Harvard degree, and I didn't want them to be a teacher at our school, even though they had all the accolades on paper.
Reason? What was the reason?
They lacked character, integrity, in my opinion, and I think those are more valued than a diploma from Harvard. And I think those are things that you want to teach our kiddos, because memorizing something from the Civil War to the World War II is not going to make them successful. But what's going to make them successful is project-based learning why they did those things. And then if you were in that situation, how would you build it? Because now the memorization goes back. Granted, my mom and I, when we did long division, she'd be faster because she'd done it all her life. And so her brain, and the brain works that way. Brain is a muscle. So you want to exercise that and memorize it, but you don't want to put in facts and information that's not going to do anything about it. So nowadays, for example, in 2015, AI beat Ken Jennings in Jeopardy, and he was the ultimate Jeopardy. So even though if you have the information, the facts, you're not smart as AI. And this goes back when IBM created the machine in 1998, and it was a gentleman named by the name of Kasparov. He was the world champion chess player from Soviet Union, former Azerbaijani, but he changed allegiance. He lost to the computer in AI in 1998, and he was a world chess champion. So now we're at a realize that we know that computers can do the work that we
Outsmart us
can.
for sure,
Absolutely.
yeah.
How are we applying this information we're learning? How are we building together? How are we working together? And ultimately, we want to. So my school currently, we're working on getting something called a character distinction, and it's given by the state, and it is given, and we haven't earned it yet, and we've been trying for a long time. And we're almost there. I think we're gonna get it this year. It's about how, and not grades or anything informational, but how are they making good decisions, and
You mean the children of the school?
how are they
Almost
making
like a
good,
star.
yeah.
Is it like a star test or something they have to take?
It is. So all of Texas has to do that, and it's unfortunately it's a measure that we measure most kids, but it's actually where schools are funded.
Oh, Sean knows. Sean had the second worst rated school in Texas because they didn't do so good on their task or whatever it was called.
task,
Task,
yeah,
test.
TASS.
Task, yeah. So
Yeah.
that's when I came to the United States.
Yeah. I think
the
ours
school-
was
and the-
TASS.
And the school
or
next to
TAS.
you
It was
lost
TAS.
funding completely because of it. They had the scores were so bad they lost funding and had to another school district had to.
Yeah, that was
say,
recently.
quote,
I think
merge
that
or
was.
buy them out. Yeah.
I think that
Yes,
was last
yeah,
in the
so
last
recently.
5 to 10 years.
And they're all ruled by TA. TA stands for Texas Education.
So I guess the state at some point says, y'all suck so bad, y'all aren't even applying any of your knowledge here, or y'all aren't even attempting
They have
to
to
teach,
make, but
so we have to make the cut.
But they're the ones that decide. So they have something called TEKS, stands for Texas Essential Knowledge and Skills, and they set the standards where after first grade they must know this, after second grade they must know this. And when I got into the classroom, I said, I mean, my first year it was impossible, but now when I had mastered my craft, it was to the minimum of what I was teaching.
So what year did you start teaching and what grade were you in?
Great question. So I go to the college system, and remember I'm ahead a year compared to my peers. I graduated high school when I was 16, so everybody was 17 or 18. So I'm like, oh, I'm gonna finish college in 4 years, 20 years, I'll be in the classroom. And I knew I wanted to be a teacher. Of course, I had other pursuits, but I got into that 4-year degree, and let's just say I have a 8-year degree with only a 4-year degree.
I know, same thing. 7 years for my 4 year. Yep, I get it.
Going into college, real life hits you. And my dad said, I'll help you pay for school. I went to HCC. So I'm taking remedial math now because I was so ahead in 10th grade. And my teacher said, if you take Algebra 2 in summer school.
The exact same thing happened to me.
You?
I already know what
Okay.
you're going to say because it had been 2 years without any
2
math.
years without any
that
math.
I ended up in college and not even remedial, whatever was below intermediate.
Absolutely.
Like
yeah.
I had to take 2
Ninth
classes
grade, 10th
before.
grade math again. Yeah.
You can't go, just like you said, your brain's a muscle. And 2 years without math, I just went,
Absolutely. And I remember seeing these things I mean, this stuff has no meaningless, these formulas, but I didn't memorize it. And so I had to once again. So then I was like, oh, this is a system used to get money and keep kids in school. Because they gave me a list of classes I have to take, and I wanted to transfer to a university. And in that list, I was, okay, so when my dad paid for college, I raised my hand and said, can I use the restroom? And my professor said, we're actually all adults here, so if you can use it, you don't have to ask. And I said, what?
you don't have to.
I called my buddy. I'm like, hey, what are you doing? Like, let's hang out. Like,
Yeah.
I don't have to be here. But then my grades started dropping, and my dad said, I'm not paying for this. And then I started paying myself, and wow.
Your story was
My
just
mind
like mine.
changed. I was like,
My parents were
same,
like,
similar.
I kept dropping my classes because I just wanted to be able to get insurance. So I would do it, whatever, 18, 20 hours, whatever was required. And then I'd drop it down to like 2 classes. My parents were like, we're not continuing to pay for your stuff anymore. This is stupid. So my grandma paid for 5 minutes, and then I got that job at Neiman's, and Neiman's paid for the rest of it.
Okay. But now you
and
value it
Neiman's
more.
Neiman's didn't care that I was dropping the classes. It was already paid for. It was fine. They didn't know
Oh,
what was
okay.
happening.
Good. That way you have the ease of.
But I was ready to get done by then. I was already at year 5 or 6 when I started that. So I didn't have a ton left.
And so you might have said it, but what grade are you teaching now?
I am.
Or you're
I was
admin,
teaching. I set it up with 3rd grade.
Okay.
So, but I went to elementary school. I wanted to do middle school, and I was just driving by elementary school one day, and I just saw a coach at recess playing basketball with them, just at 8 in the morning. And I was like, that looks like a fun job. Like, he's just hanging out with kids and getting paid for it, and he looks happy. So I thought, like, maybe we should go to elementary school. But the college lasted for a long time. And of course, I wanted to work my way through college, and hence I found the restaurant business. And so I'm ready to go to transfer. The lady's like, no, the curriculum has changed. You have to take these extra classes now. And I said, when I already took these classes that you told me from the get-go.
You have nightmares about this all the time that it's
So you went through
graduation
this too?
and I'm walking. This happens like a reoccurring dream. I'm calling through and get stuck and smell air vents is one of them. Another one is I'm trying to like get my diploma and walk across the stage. They were like, oh no, one of your classes didn't count. You didn't pass. You didn't go. And it's just it's like,
I was living that. Yeah. And that behavior continued. So, here I am. I want to work hard. Everything I made, I was living with my parents, 2-bedroom apartment. I remember like, once again, I want to make sure nobody knows where I live when I go home. I remember one time we didn't have a car when we came here, and so my buddy's mom was dropping me off, and my buddy's like, "Hey, is that your dad?" Because my dad was walking, and everybody in the United States has a car. I was like, "Nah,
I don't know
keep driving." But it really makes me realize the hard work that he put in and just sacrifice that he made to bring us here. And
well, that's also what I see in you that's different than other people. And I haven't seen a lot of your work, but what I have seen is that you really do care. And I think so many people, as you know, now that you're in the admin side of it, so you're now assistant principal, that people just come and they just want to accept a paycheck. They clock in.
Yes, absolutely.
They leave the building,
And you want to, and that's the goal, is to teach our kids, you're either a contributor or you're a
milk the system.
Yeah, you're a liability.
But I think from where you came from and seeing your parents and just the life that you lived, you have a different, look on life.
And,
when you come here.
And yes and no, because once I started being a teenager in America and seeing what the teens did, it was super easy to fall into that. I remember wanting to graduate high school and no college in sight. Only reason I went to college, I was like, my dad didn't bring me to this country not to go to college.
So what did you think you wanted to do when you first started attending college? Was education?
Education. I mean, I was really into storytelling. I wanted to go to film school. I took some cinematography classes, but ultimately I applied to New York Film School. I got accepted, and I didn't want to leave my parents. We're a tight-knit, so we've come from a different land, and we have to be, and that really shaped us. We were very close together as a family, and it was just us. Funny story. When we first landed from the, we left all our luggages there, and my dad's like, we have to go back and get our luggages. And
you mean at the airport?
At the airport. And he said, I found a bus that goes there. So we, as a family, all got together. We got on this bus, and we're trying to get to the airport. And this bus goes around all of downtown Houston and goes back. The guy's like, all right, y'all got to get off or pay the new fee. And my dad's like, I thought this goes to the airport. He said, no, that's a street called West Airport.
Oh, God.
So I was like, what type of country names a street after an airport?
Well, I was wondering if we even charge anymore for the metro.
We do.
Because we lived downtown for a little while, and I wanted Liam to ride the Metro light rail. And
what a great experience.
Yeah, a little great stinky pee-pee experience. Yes, a lot of pee-pee, a lot of throw up the bus stops. Anyway, we got on. No one asked for any kind of card.
Well, we tried. The machine was broken, so we couldn't even pay. So we tried to get on, and they just let us on and just gave you a ride.
I was like, I guess I don't
think they charge anybody.
Less, maybe the rail, but definitely people have.
Well, there's a machine where you put money in, but nobody asks for anything.
We were on the rail though, not the bus, right?
Yeah. And also in my country, metro means subway. Here, metro is a bus route, and then of course you found out the research and history of Houston and why they don't have transportation, because you come from a public transportation very easily, and it's because just keep the less fancy people out of the city.
That's never heard of that, but that makes sense.
1940s when they were building.
Also, because we're so spread out, though, just in general.
Absolutely,
I'm sure it's just so much more for that too.
So I get out of college, and then I'm by this time I'd been in the restaurant business for 5-6 years. I all the things I learned, I went to my family and I went to school. So I graduated owing no money. I never borrowed any money. I always rented my books, if not bought them. So scot-free. Actually, the U of H, the school I graduated, they wrote me a check for $200 when I graduated because I never used the printer from the library, which I had.
Where's my $200? I went to U of H.
Then I didn't get that $200. You must have used the printers.
No, I didn't.
So if you never made copies, that I got my $200. But then now comes the workforce. You go to job fairs, you're looking, and I had a really great student teaching experience. And I believe that, kids learn 90% of what they do. They retain 30% of what they read and about 20% of what they hear. So you have to do something to learn it.
Oh, I learned that way too.
Absolutely. And I've heard you listen and you say, I take action. And once you take action, that's when the learning comes. So you want to incorporate that into kids too. But in learning, my true college experience came in when I was in the classroom student teaching. And I had a really good experience with the school. It was a school that I used to play basketball outside and thought it was a great school. It was a great music school in HISD, and they loved me there. I hadn't earned my last name yet, so I was Mr. Nas. And the kids loved me there. The parents loved me there. I made an impact on them, and I would go there and then go straight to bartending. And then whenever tips I made, I'd buy gifts to the kids, especially Christmas time. And that school wanted to hire me. They're like, we love you. We want, and we know your story. And then when they interviewed me, they told me telling my background and how I want to be a teacher, and they loved me. So the principal was like, we're hiring you. And then I'm going to the restaurant after, and then she gives me a call. She says, I'm going to sound like an old lady, but I can't offer you this job. And it broke me down because that was my only way. Like, you go to college, you're student teaching, and you're going to get a job at the place that your student taught, and the families. And she said, you wrote something on your Facebook a couple years back when I was in high school.
My God.
And here's the thing, in college, they tell us, I had this incredible professor, Dr. Wright, he said, make sure you know what your digital footprint is, because people will look you
Put
up.
on the internet? Yep. We always do.
Exactly. What you put on the internet will come and bite you. And I was like, okay, let's privatize my Facebook. Everything's private. Since then, I've never put anything on Facebook as far as
How did they find it if it was private?
No, I did. I did it in college. So before I went into the workworkforce, I already had my mindset. I'm ready. They can't find it. So shout out to Houston, Pimp C. It was his birthday, and he had passed since. And his Facebook page said, "What is your favorite verse by Pimp C? Please put it on his page." So I wrote a verse by Pimp C at the end, and it's what you know about them Texas boys coming down on Candy Doys. Yeah. And I wrote that on his Facebook page. Pimp C's Facebook page is not private. So when they look up my name, his page comes up with my name.
I see what you're saying.
Yeah, and so she tells me that.
I was like, otherwise someone else is following Pimp C on that.
Right, exactly. Right, maybe we could have something.
So they didn't hire you because you wrote that verse?
Yes, and I was in 9th or 10th grade. So this is years after of college. And she explained it, and she said, our parents are going to look you up, and you cannot be a role model to kids if you have something out there like that.
I was literally thinking about that this morning. I would probably be nosy. I'd probably look up my kid's teacher too. Not at his daycare, but I would probably do the same thing.
I would, as you should, and I would also recommend you meet them and even have a cup of coffee with them, just to get to know who's actually teaching your child and who is molding your child's mind. Well, that's such an important thing.
The girl that works for me that I was talking about earlier, when I first found her, I couldn't find her anywhere on social media. I was like, why can't I find you on social media, girl? She's like, remember, I was a teacher. I don't want parents looking me up. So she didn't even have her social media under her own name. Everything is like unsearchable.
Yeah, same. I always stayed away from politics, anything that could urge to get upset. I was more of a social media stalker, but never a commenter. But that resonated with me, and it broke me down. I went to the restaurant, and I was bartending that night, and they're like, what's wrong with you? I'm the happy-go-lucky. I'm like, and then a former principal came in, and she sat down, and she was a regular, and her and her husband were regulars, and they said, what's going on? I'm like, the school that I've been student teaching at, like, they almost hired me, but then there's a Facebook comment that I wrote as a teenager, and they said that's gonna bite me in the butt. And she's like, what a big mistake they made. Mm-hmm. And it lifted me up. It's just something I needed to hear. And it really motivated me that I can be an asset to a school, and I will change. And guess what? I'm going to teach kids not to write some stupid stuff on Facebook that's going to come and bite you in the butt. So I tell that to kids all the time now. Be aware of your social media and what you put. And we have a lot of kids nowadays in my school, the best of kids, award-winning kids, getting in trouble because they are on the new platform. I should know, I'm sounding old. It starts with the Discord. They're on Discord, and you see the best of kids saying things that you would never imagine, because there's that accountability piece, like, I could get away with it.
Yeah, well, I can't imagine what it's like being, especially a young kid with just such a green mind. Elementary school, some parents are giving them phones and social media that early, into intermediate school, compared to what the bullying was for us.
It's kind of sad in that situation though, because when you're a teenager, like, your mind's not even fully developed. You're not mature. You're going to say some things that you don't even understand.
Like Liam says some stuff. Like, he said some stuff the other day. We were like, what the,
So I don't know. That's really unfortunate that really anybody would do that. But I just don't think that's a big deal enough to not hire someone. I hire people, well, when you come from the business world, it's like, I want a capable person. I don't
Absolutely.
I don't care.
Sean kind of looks at it. If you did some dumb shit in the last
In
like
the
5 to 7 years, whatever. If you did some dumb shit when you were 19 or 20 and you're 40 now,
Yeah, if
you're probably a different person because Sean
you-
did some dumb shit when he was in his
Yeah, I
late 20s
can't.
and his early 20s too.
And if I
So
had social media back then, geez, I would have probably said all kinds of bad stuff.
And I didn't think that, I was just innocent. And I didn't remember it. So I go home and Google myself. And I said, like, what did they see? What did she see?
You didn't even
And
know
then-
what it was, so
yeah.
you're sitting there going, "What could I have been?"
and I see that, and then, and
not even that big of a deal.
yeah, absolutely. But here's the thing. I do that now. When I'm hiring teachers, I look at everybody's social media. And have not hired teachers because they have things that it does not look good on a role model that I want for a child. And you have to be well aware of that. And if you're willing to mold children's mind, you need to be well aware of what you put on the internet, because they are gonna find you. The kids are gonna find you. The parents are gonna find you. And ultimately, you wanna. And one of the reasons why I became a role model, I can't even want to call myself that, but I just said, if I have to be great in their eyes. So I have to be great in order to make sure that I'm setting the right tone, being a good, modeling the right behavior.
The way you are with your kids, I think it is so different. I don't really ever remember having a teacher like the way you are with the kids. You keep them really involved. It's not like a sit down type environment where we have a piece of paper and they're just like reading out of a book or whatever.
I
really,
love the outdoors.
You're their friend.
Like I love,
yeah, you're their
and
friend.
absolutely. And one teacher now, he's about to be an administrator, and I was his mentor. And they gave me him, and they said, "Hey, mentor him. He's a great teacher. He'll teach you." And he said, "What advice do you have for me?" And I said, just love them. Oh, they are students, and you have to hold them accountable for. But if you really truly care for a child, you find out their curiosity, they will perform and they will go above and beyond. And and then later on, he actually spoke to him a couple of weeks ago, and he said, one of the greatest advice I got in my career is you telling me early on to just love them, and everything else will fall into place.
Well, that's why you won Teacher of the Year in 2020, 2021? When was
2021, yeah. And but the reason that became of that is because of my first school year teaching. And this was a huge accident. And Dr. Wright, when we were in college, he said, when applying for schools, look at the median household price, comparables, if you will. And the higher it is, the better the school. I found this good school by the name of Caldwell, Caldwell, which was near my neighborhood. And, the median household income was about $150,000 at the time. This is 2011, 2012. And I applied to that school through the independent school district website. And I get a call, and they say, "Hey, we noticed that you're in the pool for applicants, and there's a school called Caldwell that's interested in hiring you." And I said, "Yeah, that's the school that I want to work at." So they're like, "We'll set you up with the interview with the principal." And then I'm like, okay, can't wait. I'm very excited. And remember, this is my dream. I'm finally gonna have my own classroom. And I would imagine putting my name on the board and making a difference and showing these kids that, where you come from doesn't matter. As long as you work hard and put your mind to it, you're gonna achieve wonders. And I had so much passion within me, and I was so excited. So when I go to this interview, it's at a different building. They're like, "Our building is under maintenance, so it's at a different building for the interview." So I go to that interview. We're going to Sunnyside. We're deep in the in Houston, lower economic sociostatus neighborhoods, and I get interviewed there. And the lady's like, "I love you. You have no experience, but your mind's in the right place." So she's like, "I'm gonna hire you before you even walk out to the parking lot. I'll give you a call. The job is yours." So she hires me, and I'm not a great leader because I'll get more into that. But when I get the application to accept it, it says Caldwell, C-O-W.
So it's not the same school. That's
It's
what I
not
thought.
the
I thought
same
you said
school.
something different.
So now it's August. I've been.
And it's
looking
too
for a
late to try
job.
to.
It's
yeah.
too late because I was so afraid that if I don't get a job in the beginning of the year, I have a whole year that they're not going to hire me in the middle of the year. So I want to be in the class. So I go into a classroom of a school that I was not ready for. And of course, before you meet the kids, you meet the teachers, you go to training, and they look at me like, "You were in the wrong place, kiddo. Like, you were going to quit the first week." And I was like, "Well, you don't know who I am. You can't judge me." And it's a fuel to the fire. Well, absolutely. Tell me what I can't do, and I'll show you what I'll do. And I remember some of the teachers shaking their heads like, "This kid's not going to last." And then while getting hired, there was another young man that got hired with me. And this was a predominantly African-American school. And this gentleman was African-American. He had just graduated Johns Hopkins University. And our principal took us to a new teacher dinner. And she took us to dinner and went to a place. Since I'm in the restaurant business, I know this place. I know how to behave as a guest because I know sometimes how guests can be rude. This lady was the rudest guest ever, and I put my head down. I was like, she was the one. Let me talk to a manager. I want this drink for free.
Yeah.
And then she's like, okay, y'all got this. And then she made us split checks. And I was like, we don't even have job. I mean, obviously I had a job because I was working in a restaurant. But the young man who graduated from Johns Hopkins, and I told him like, it was going to be an arduous year, and needless to say, it was. The young man, I looked at him, I said, research shows we need more African-American males in the classroom. We need good role models for these kiddos. And you having this degree and being in the classroom, you're going to make so many kids' lives change. You're going to have, impact on them. There's a path for them. And he's like, yeah. And then he quit the first week. And I told myself,
did you stick it out the whole year?
I finished the whole year. I sure did. And I'm still friends with those kiddos. And they, now they're at an age, they're calling me. One of them asked me to go grab a beer with him. And I said, you're 20 at your age. You're not yet. But I went into that. And here's my first experience. Once again, excited.
What grade was that?
This was third grade math and science.
Okay, so you made that big of an impact. I mean, you got people still calling you when they're
yeah. And they come to Thanksgiving. That's our holiday. The kids come, and I truly wanted to ensure that they had a champion because I just wanted every kid needs a champion, and I wanted it, and I noticed that there's that need, and because my first week, I'm excited. I'm meeting the parents. I'm meeting the kids, and they're telling me all these stories of prison, and the principal's like, don't make sure that you don't tell kids they're going to go to jail because all their parents are in jail, and that's a bad thing. And I was like, well, that is a bad thing. Kids shouldn't go, but it was just the norm, so I couldn't mention that. You can't say kids have more Jordans than pencils because that's just the norm at the school. And I thought I had a hard life, becoming a refugee, homelessness. These kids had it so hard.
Yeah, like foster care, parents in prison.
Absolutely. So my first question was for them that, who would you like to meet? I get to know all the kids. So the first day of school, I want to know. And I've had experience in the classroom, but never leading it on my own. My first question was, who do you want to meet? Who would you like to meet when you grow up? And I remember very distinctly, I had about 45 kids that day.
In one class?
Two classes. It was split. First kid said, they all said it differently, but two answers were, Big Homie Quan, LeBron James, and then every other kid said they wanted to meet their dad. It hit me that I thought I had a hard life, but I had a loving mom and a dad, even through the turmoils of immigration and coming to a country and war, and knowing that these kids in the greatest country in the world are being neglected. And ask the kid 1 + 1, they don't know what 1 + 1 is in third grade. So I was like, okay, I think that's why that guy quit. I decided to stick around and learn. And I remember complaining to one of the counselors, like, these kids are not ready. She says, you're just not going to you're not going to be a key to every door. And
so do good enough, kind of.
Yeah, good enough. But I was like, no, I am going to open that door. And I took classes, I took workshops, I went to different observations, I did research, I went to Google, how do you get kids to quiet down? How do you get kids to listen? So I started researching, but living in that, and it really helped me become classroom management because these kids were coming from homes that, school was at the last thing in their mind. They're trying to survive. The reason they're putting in school because the kids are getting a free meal. And then furthermore, some parents want their kids to not act as if they're learning because there's a stipend for parents who have kids under special ed. So they're cheating the system in a way that, and the kids like,
or keep them in a school another year longer.
Absolutely. And I don't know how that works, but the system does require money to families with special ed. So they intentionally want their kids to get that money. So you're hindering the kids. And
so I was going to ask you what the big difference was between that school and the other school you ended up going to work for after that. But
this current one, the current one is I moved from a public school to a charter school. Okay. And I still kept my relationships.
And a charter school is is that a magnet school?
It is a lottery based. So you have parents from all over.
River Oaks Elementary kind of thing.
Yes, like KIPP and Yes Prep along. This is where parents want their child to go to a certain school and they're willing to drive up to that school on a daily basis. So you're gathering parents who value education. You're gathering parents who were willing to take the time of their day to take their kids to school.
So is that why you applied at that school then?
No, I did not. I applied at that school because I was looking for a home and, I was looking for neighborhoods and I found a home and that was the school near the home that I live in now. And that's the reason why. But I also knew that I just wasn't ready, and I wanted to save these. And I finished the school year strong, and I implemented a lot of things. And what I did in the classroom was I had to learn how to classroom manage. You are not taught that in college. So I had been stabbed, I had been spit on, my nickname was the white N-word. The kids just said that freely all the time. But once they got to know me, the teachers got me like, man, this kid got some substance. Like, he doesn't give up. He's here before everybody. And I told them like, hey, if y'all want some drinks, come see me at the restaurant. But I wasn't gonna give up on these kids. But at the same time, I said, I gotta find a way to manage this. So one of the things I did, I introduced money to them. So I gave each kid a job. I had a paper, I didn't call him paper passer outer. I called him logistics manager, because that's a job that I want them to have in the future that has a real name. Every kid had a different job, and it really helped with them because it was incentivized, and I would teach them I would pay weekly paychecks. So for their job, they would get money. And then, and that really helped them for a little bit. But of course, there's a lot of challenges. It's hard work. I had to keep printing money. And by the time I moved to every year, I got better with this classroom economy. And so next year,
So you stayed around for more than 1 year?
No, but I continued the same teaching style.
Okay, got it.
When I went to the next school. And then with this, I really had learned how to classroom manage with the classroom economy. But I was learning more about money as well as an adult. So I got to the point where each kid had their own jobs. I had a banker to make sure they knew that. There was a police officer to make sure every kid's shirt was tucked in. And these kids were really making money. And then I said, you have to pay rent for your desk. So as soon as they get their money, I take their money away. They're like, hey.
This, right, what you're saying right here, is what's missing.
Sense.
It's what's missing. It's what's missing in
It's part of it.
I would imagine in most classrooms don't do that.
Absolutely.
So now you're telling me about the economics that you're
yeah,
creating. Do you do that? Do you go in and
I
watch
did that on my
other
research.
teachers?
I read a book called Teach Like Your Hair's on Fire, and he had a little I had a full head of hair when I started teaching. He had a little bit of games, but then I introduced all these different jobs, and I made sure each kid, but then I also went further. They had to apply for their job. So their parents were prepping them, and they'd tell me, this is such a great concept, and he's upset because he didn't get this job, and he had another job. Then I would hire another student because they had more experience with this. And then I started introducing taxes. So as soon as they get their paycheck, I deduct their money. And I remember one kid's looking at me, he's like, when am I not gonna pay taxes? And I smiled and I said, never. But he was 10 years old, so he grasped that concept. So as these students would make money, I had to have value for that money. So I would, if you wanted to use the restroom, that was $5. If you hit a kid, which was rarely now because good kids, that was a $100 fine. So I would take their money away. And then a lot of kids would go into debt. And then what I would use every Friday, I would sell items to these kids. So whatever tip money I made, I would buy gadgets for the kids. And I would do an auction because I need them to spend their money so I could bring the money back. Yeah. So I could pay them again. So now I'm a government. And I was like, okay, now I need to push consumerism on these kids. But then I noticed there's some kids who, and then after you pay the rent, if you don't want to pay rent, you want to buy your property, you have to pay me $400 of your paycheck. They're like, oh, that's like 3-4 paychecks I got to save up. And so, but those kids, did it. And then they bought different property. Then you see 2, 3, or 4 kids who just own the whole
Did you
classroom.
ever get any pushback from the teacher saying, hey, you're wasting time doing this and not teaching
Initially. And I told my principal, just trust me, the scores will be there. Because as long as the scores are there, it'll be there. And it's really hard to implement. But once the machine gets rolling, it's like a well.
You're interested.
So that was my question is, so when you show up in the teaching system, what control do you have outside of like, hey, this is what the kid needs to learn, this is what you have to teach? You're saying that as long as you pass your test, is that generally speaking?
If you don't know how to teach, I was.
Or as long as the kids pass the test.
I was teaching the subject, and this was part of the curriculum. But here's the thing: financial literacy is taught for 2 weeks in May.
Yeah. So when you show up in the school system, how much are you in control, and then how much of the curriculum do you have to follow? And is it from a state level, or is it from that specific school says, hey, this is the curriculum we teach?
Great question. It's from a state level, and it's all dictated by TEA, the Texas Education Agency, and they dictate what you teach, and they measure you up with the standardized test, which was TOS, then TAX, now STAR.
And so is it, X amount of hours they have to take this? Like who determines like the time frame and the...
They determine all that. You have to abide by that, and then, for example, each student has to have 2 hours of math, 20 hours of this week. So they all dictate that.
You're still doing math and you're teaching them like real
exactly.
life.
And then the reason I went into that, my first year, I look at it's called the year at a glance and what you're supposed to cover, and it is fast paced. It's a lot, and it's expected the kid learns, because some kids don't learn, and some kids, it's called differentiation. Each kid learns at a different pace, and you want to have to work with one-on-one with them, and so it's really difficult, and it's harder to scale that way because it's too many kids, and the classroom sizes are too. So in order to target each child, you have to be very intentional. That was for me a lot of data of this kid knows this kid doesn't know that, this kid doesn't know the fundamentals of this. They have to understand this before they can come here. So you have 60 kids.
It's a balancing act. Trying
And
to get
it's like running your own company with 60 employees that you have to make sure that they're all on different level and they're all growing.
So it's a reflection on you as a teacher. If the scores are bad in your class, do you get
Absolutely,
reprimanded
yeah.
for it?
Yeah, I mean, there's obviously, I would get reprimanded. They're called something like a growth plan, but it's really hard to get rid of teachers. And that's one of the problems in school, is that obviously principals will push that. You want to get higher scores on the test. But we have, as a nation, we've driven away from what true education is, which is to teach our kids to be competent and contributors of our society. And going through that test is not going to help them. But I'm a victim of that because I mastered that test, and I knew each question that would be on there, and I knew how to get kids ready, and I knew some kids weren't going to pass it. So when I target those kids, I would just work on visuals because I knew they didn't know how to read, but they knew a triangle between a square. So I'd focus on those questions, practice those. So when they took the test, I know those questions were enough to pass, because the most challenging questions is the reading comprehension. And it's still the same challenge that we have, is our third graders are not understanding what they read or repeating what they read. And that's still a national problem that we have now, that our kids are not reading. And it's not emphasized enough. And it all ties to math, it all ties to social studies and science. And we are failing at a high rate. And most of the kids that I know how to learn read, it's because they have support at home. Their parents are reading. Their parents are readers. They're exposed to that reading. They know the importance of it.
I'm glad you took that iPad away. We took Liam's iPad away.
Okay.
Yeah, that
last
was my
week.
most recent thing. We kind of talked about doing it before.
He's 6 or 7.
No, he's 5.
5. Okay.
Yeah,
He's
and
addicted to that iPad, and we didn't
he started
minimize screen time.
Yeah, he started becoming
Weird.
attached to it, and then but kind of learning a lot of the stuff that again is not going to help him at all, and kind of just weird shows,
Guys
down
in toilets,
darn
YouTube
goals on
potty
YouTube.
head?
Yeah,
What's
it was
the
all
potty
YouTube
head?
stuff. So anyways, he took it away, and
Skibbity toilet.
what's weird is he asked me for like 1 hour the next day. He's like, Dad, why'd you when can I get my TV? I was like, oh, I don't think you really need it, buddy. And then he just stopped asking. He didn't even ask.
He
He didn't
started
even
asking
ask.
you to read every night, though.
Oh yeah,
He's
then
asking- every
now
night
he
he
has to read. Yeah,
So
no.
what a great thing you've done for your child, because what he has right there is access to dopamine. A lot of our kids are doing that, and a lot of parents, and it's easy in the restaurant. You give it to them, it calms down, and we see that with our baby too.
I think that's where you get into you're both busy, right? Oh, I need to just do this real quick, and so you
shut
give
up,
him the
yeah.
iPad. So you definitely gotta but we love it more because now he wants to hang out with us all the time, and
he's
he wants to
calling our bed
read.
every
Yeah,
night, yeah.
wants to read, and he
Absolutely.
wants to hang out, and he's like engaged and paying attention. It's really cool.
More focused on the now.
Yeah.
That's incredible,
And
because
well,
that's
also
what
what you're
we're
saying too is it's not enough the time they have at school. That parents need to be going home with their kids and doing more to keep them where they need to be and not fall behind.
Yes, absolutely. And that's what I see. Those kids who are, the reason the school that I'm in, it's actually the #1 charter school in all of Houston and Fort Bend. It's because our parents are really involved. And if they're not, I get them involved.
Mm-hmm.
I send them information, resources, what they can use. And I expect them to go to the library with their kids. I expect them to come to the events and to show up for their kiddos and be there. And when you said that, I want the parents to talk to their kids' teachers. If you don't know your kids' teacher's name, then you need to do some information, because this person has so much influence on your
over your
child.
person,
And and here's the thing, going back to checking the Facebook, sped teachers are hard to find, and I look over at my school, I look over to the hiring, I look over everybody, I check their certification, I check their Facebook, I check even go as far as MySpace. What did you write? And there was this one colleague, she said, hey, I have this person. And nobody goes, it's very rare for somebody to go into special education, and we're the noblest of peoples and most patient, and thank God for them.
One of my artists does that full time. She works here on the weekends
And then
does that
sped
full
teacher
time.
by day? Wow. She must have the most patience.
She does.
They're really special people, and you have to want to do that. And so this particular person had the credential, they had the certification by the state, and also the a certification for the special education. And one way I could find somebody is when I look at their resume, I see their college, and then in Facebook you could see their name and the college name and where they went to, and I knew this was that particular person. As soon as I saw the picture, I moved on to the next resume. And then my colleague said, "Hey, how come you didn't call that person in?" And I said, "Well, I don't think they have a representable Facebook that's good enough for our kiddos." And he's like, "What do you mean? Let me see it." And he had a blunt in his mouth, he had a liquor in his hand, and like I didn't see it originally when I saw it. She's like, "Oh, look, he has a gun in his lap." So it was like, okay, how did this person get a spit certification, and who is hiring this person? So going back to that, I do judge people on how they portray themselves, because that's how you're going to portray yourself to our kiddos, and that's very important. And that is a life lesson that sticks with me, and I still to this day I tell kiddos, like, be careful what you put on the internet. And we've noticed a lot more of that. Going back to what you said about the kids having cell phones, we have a lot of neighborhood librarian come to the school and teach the parents. We had the county sheriff come and talk to the kids, and she told us the most important things, that our kids have a world in their hands, and anything they could look at. And there's so many bad people on the other side of that. Even online gaming, they're pedophiles know where kids are, so they go look for that. And we need to be very cognizant that there are people out there. We have to protect our children. So this sheriff, as she's talking to our parents, she says they confiscated every fifth grader who was in trouble, and by that age, I think their phones could be. And every child who was in trouble, whether it was in fight in school or the sheriff got involved, or she said every phone they confiscated had porn in it at age 5. And so now you realize, oh, these parents are not aware that these kids have access to this type of things. And kids are smart. Our kids are super smart. And as the generation goes, they become smarter and smarter. So they know different ways to get through the parental controls that you have set. So it was really fascinating to tell parents that you need to be aware of what they're on. And with the iPad, there's an excess of dopamine. They're constantly getting in images and being entertained. So we take that away, you put them in a classroom, the teacher cannot match that. There's no way the classroom
moving too fast. Yeah.
Absolutely. I'm easily bored. And then they would say, oh, they have ADHD. Because it's just,
I see that.
If we teach our kids the way we taught our kids yesterday, we're robbing them of their future. It's a saying by John Dewey. It's just that we are not at a pace going with the generation. The model that we built 124 years ago.
So do you feel like a lot of the teachers get frustrated at this point? I mean, I know you said that there's good teachers and bad teachers, obviously, at every school. Yeah. So even at a charter school, it's something you struggle with is keeping them involved. Do you feel like it's hard to just keep the classrooms under control because they're young and they're wild and they have all this energy and their attention span is so short that the teachers just get burnt out and they're just collect a paycheck?
Yeah. We had somebody just quit first 2 weeks, and she was coming from a different. And once again, we go back to not judging by the experience, but judging by the character. And is this person capable enough? And my principals convinced me that she's had a child, and she's a parent, and she's worked this job, and she's gonna be a good teacher. And here's the thing: you can not be a good teacher. I'm gonna coach you. I'm gonna make sure we're gonna put systems in place to ensure you're successful. And that's one thing I love about the charter school is that it wasn't a competition. We were working together. We sat together, and then we looked at each kid's data and how can this kid. So in education, the most ignored student is the high achieving student, because the teacher's, he already knows it. But we're disservicing that child because we're not teaching them to their highest potential.
So do you think the charter school has a better direction to guide people in the type of careers and
Absolutely.
their interests than a regular school?
I would say public school, charter school, and ultimately best is homeschool. And homeschool is not best for anybody, but if I had the means and the money to go to work every day, I would homeschool my child. It's not for everybody, because obviously I have a degree in teaching and I've been in the classroom, and my wife and I, we have a lot of experience in education, how the mind of a child works. So I would recommend that for us. And I recommend it for a lot of people who are entrepreneurs, who have figured out what the skills they truly need in life. It's not the Civil War because I could ask that to ChatGPT. ChatGPT now writes emails.
That's exactly how I learn what I learned on the internet too. Is just I don't need to read a whole book about it. Boom, ask my question and having my answer.
Do you think that this system is the way it is because no matter what, they still have to follow the state?
It is,
test?
Yeah.
They
have to follow the state, yeah. And so the private schools, they have their own agenda, and it's really unfortunate because an average prisoner costs $33,000 per state. an average student in private school costs about 10 grand. So, the money that we spend in a 4-year prison term, which is 33 times 4, is actually, we can take that money and put a child from first grade to 12th grade with that taxpayers' money. But ultimately, going back to my first year teaching, where 43 of my students wanted to meet their fathers, and there's a theory you learn in college. It's called the theory of from kindergarten to prison. And you read about that, but when you see it in real life, this kid's, no matter what I do, no matter how much I love this kid, he's gonna end up in prison. And some of my students are. They went to jail at 15, 16, 17 my first year, because that's just what they're exposed to. And I would call them, have conversations with them, and like, don't do that. But like, after that phone call, his peers are gonna influence what he wants to do.
What do you think is going to happen now that Trump is giving, is it $10,000 per child a year? Is it tax break or credit? I don't know if it's a credit or.
Is it credit for homeschool?
What do you think is going to happen? Do you think people who are not capable of homeschooling will do this to get the extra money?
Yes, absolutely. I know some people too that just say,
It's
I
going to put us in a
homeschool, and they
worse
just give it.
position?
Yeah. The idea is great, and every idea sounds good until the application of it. And once you put it into action, you notice that, hey, this needs to be changed. And I think it's a great idea, but I've noticed that, here and there they lower, Proposition 13 back in California lowered the property tax. So taxpayers didn't fund the school as much, and then that had an effect. But ultimately, you can throw more money into the problem, it won't fix it. We need an education reform.
What do you think that?
That's kind of my thought. It's so I think when I say anti-college and all that stuff, it's more of like the reform. College, definitely, I don't really think you need it anymore with this day and age. Like, the technology's too far past. Everybody has access to information. There's no ROI on it. So you go to it, the normal person that doesn't have a scholarship or their parents pay for it, they get in debt. And then when they get out, they get a car note and an apartment.
Mortgage.
And then they can barely make their student
That's exactly
loan.
what your wife's dealing with right now.
Yeah, but then they're almost stuck,
So
and
she
so
paid
you
her
can't.
student loans off.
I know she did, but it was hard, and it was really rough for her.
We had to really plan it. And then she actually got $2,000 taken off because she's a kindergarten teacher and not a math teacher. So they get more of an incentive.
Okay, good.
But she really worked hard for it, but just to see the trap.
Yeah, that's what I mean. It's like the average person. And again, some people, the 1% probably would have done good no matter what, right? That make it through school and just kill it.
You said, when you first came here, I don't know if we were on camera, I don't think we were, that, you've watched the podcast, and in just maybe the 10, 15 episo% that you saw, you've learned more.
Many, and I've learned financial literacy, and I implemented it to the kids. And once I noticed they were doing it, 90% of what you do is what you learn. They started excelling in financial literacy. And then I had great praise from parents, and then they went to my principal, said, we got to do this the whole school. And she's like, oh, I love it. And I showed it to some of my colleagues. They're like, no, that's too hard to implement. I'm not going to. And then I was like,
just have the other teachers come in your room and watch you.
They liked the idea, but they just didn't want to put forth the effort, because I'm paying salary, a fake salary to 60 kids, and I have to keep up with that. But it truly made a difference. And those kids that I mentioned that they kind of owned up the whole classroom.
They're leaders now?
They are. And what was the main thing? It's called instant gratification and delayed gratification. And Dateline did a study on this. It's called the marshmallow test, where they put a marshmallow in front of a kid, and they say, this is yours, you can keep that, and we're gonna leave you, it's still yours, but if you don't touch it, you're gonna get 2 marshmallows. So they record the kids after they leave, and they grab the marshmallow. But some kids they didn't grab the marshmallow because they knew the outcome. They were future seers.
They were patient.
They were
patient to see where.
And they won. So this study, these marshmallows, they studied the lives of these kids until they became adults. And every kid who grabbed the marshmallow was a failure, didn't go to college, or was not successful in life. Every kid that waited, whether went to college or not, they were very successful in their business and their endeavors. And then I noticed that with those kids. The kids who didn't buy the trinkets, because I told them at the end of the year, they're gonna have a PlayStation or a Nintendo Switch, and they'll be able to buy that with their money.
They saved their money.
Those kids who had those assets, they bought assets instead of liabilities.
Desks.
They bought the desk, and they had owned he's like, I don't even have to work anymore because I have like 4 desks.
That was Sean as a kid.
I'm getting all this money. But those were the kids that were getting the Nintendos in place, because they knew so my principal was like, I love what you're doing. I want to move you to a higher grade. So I got to have the same kids again. So now I got to see if they changed.
You moved with them, yeah.
If they moved, same kids again. They ended up buying all, and they knew it. And I was like, listen, you got to save your money. You can't just buy like silly things. And he's like, no, I don't want to wait till next week. And those kids who would spend their money immediately as soon as they get their paycheck on Friday, because that's when I opened the store to them. And those were the kids that were struggling academically. Those were the struggles. They were students emotionally. They didn't
They just wanted instant gratification just to get through the temporary of not feeling so great about where
Absolutely,
they're at.
yeah. And then I know those kids who had delayed gratification, they would be much more successful in life. So the question I was asking, can I teach these kids this? Can I change a kid who wants to just get instant gratification?
I think you can. Yeah, I think you can teach someone. I don't necessarily know a kid, but
Well, I'm
definitely.
saying in most cases, kids are born with it, right? I think you're a hustler from the beginning or not. Either you're in a situation like you grew up in, or I'm not saying ours was anything close to being in a war-torn country, but coming from not a lot puts more hustle in you, right?
It goes back to when you were talking about the financial literacy. Why? I mean, it's so crazy, and there's no common sense. Like, they're wondering why when someone graduates, they don't know what to do in life, and they go into debt because they don't know what a credit, you don't know what interest rate is.
Yeah.
They don't know, even about what debt is. And so, and then you, on top of that, you make bad decisions when you're 18. So
do.
couple like not having any of the right information and right skills to being 18.
Kids don't know
And
what
you-
an
yeah,
interest rate is on a credit card. And
nothing.
we were
No, they'll
watching,
just sign up
Sean
for
sent
it.
me something about Visa, MasterCard. They're getting questioned by the whoever. And they were like, do you know the numbers of how many trillions of dollars Americans are in debt? No one could answer the question. And the average interest rate on a card is 28%.
Wow.
Yeah,
You
so,
can't
but-
get
but
out
if
of
you're
that.
a-
You're not, you don't teach these kids.
Yeah,
what that
18-year-old
means.
kid gets a card, probably has no idea it's 28%. And then they charge some stuff on there, can't pay it off right away. It just gets bigger and bigger. And so if they had the right information, they would just make so
And that's what
many-
angered me when I was, I'm struggling.
and it's
financially.
simple. And like, these kids are 18. You can learn a lot by the time you're 18. So I think if you teach them
You're
that,
very capable. If you can learn that in third grade, fifth
Yeah.
grade.
If you can
but it
teach
goes
them
back to what it was built for. We were made to build workers. So a worker's not going to work if they don't have mortgage, if they don't have debt.
and how do you think we can change it? I mean, you have to change it at the state level, I guess.
State, local, government, obviously but I think the way I look at it, great question. There's a story that my mom used to tell me when I was a kid. There's a fire in a village, and all the villagers are trying to take buckets of water to turn off the fire. And there's a swallow that's flying back and forth with its little beak and grabbing a water and then dropping it over the big fire and then going back. And the crow sees the swallow and says, "You're not making a big difference. You're not making a change in the fire." And the swallow answers like, "This is what I can do. That's what I'm capable of." So going back, obviously, I would love to open a school with my mindset and coach teachers and become that. Or what I have the power of is to coach the teachers because I didn't want to leave the classroom. My principal said, I was like, I love these 60 kids, and I was going to introduce, because then I started during the pandemic when the stock world, the GameStop thing was going on. I introduced to the kids, and they knew games and GameStop, and I talked about stocks and exchanging, and I was like, they're very capable, and they would ask me, hey, what is Nasdaq at now? Where is Apple at now? And it's because we had these conversations. Like, for example, right now, Bitcoin is hitting all-time highs. Why are our children not talking about this? It's the biggest transfer of finance, wealth in the history of our time. And then our kids are not talking about this in the classroom.
Elon Musk school, they are.
Yeah, and I think he did that with his kids, and he has a private, and he's doing
He's a
it.
private school, I think, for like 30
Yeah,
students.
That's my plan. Is I'm gonna,
Maybe the two of you can collaborate.
yeah,
You
well,
can help
you
him run the
never know.
school.
So I want to create my own school for my kid and or maybe some other kids, but on a larger level, that's why we started the podcast, just to try to get information out there. Number one. Number two, hopefully at some point, I'll be able to disrupt the traditional education system. I don't, it'll be down the road. That's like ultimate.
Absolutely, and I think that's
long-term
the goal.
goal, but
it has to be some passionate individuals who's willing to make change, because tenure with teachers and teachers unions, those are all roadblocks in the way of changing, because they're set in their ways. They don't want to do that because they're looking out for adults and not looking out for kids.
But isn't it really hard to get funding for a new school? I would imagine. I don't know if you need funding or
Well,
if
if you want
private or
funding,
how
you
that
have
works.
to do that. So
Like, how does it count as school hours?
So my school, we get funded by the number of kids. So charter schools, the law came out that if you're going to limit the number of kids you take, you have to hold a lottery, so you can't pick and choose. And then every kid you get a X amount of dollars. So that's how that funding works. But however, if you're going to get state funding, you have to ensure you cannot discriminate. You take all comers. And if you do have a student who falls in the SPED population, which is the 13 disabilities, whether they're deaf, autistic, or ADHD, you have to be able to give them the full service by law. And then, so if you're getting state funds, you have to be able to do that.
So how does that work if Sean, let's just say he decided to
Sean,
open
I
up a
think
school?
Sean's
How would
school,
it count as real
it would be a
credits
private
and
school.
hours?
I would
mean,
vision his school to be private
it would
because
be
he
private. It
wants
wouldn't be any
to,
funding.
his ID, so he don't have
But it
to
had to
go
get
by
state
the state
approved
rules.
though? Like how do you?
No. And,
Okay.
and I would
I don't know
do
how
more
private
research
schools
into that on.
I would wonder
love
why
your
there's
vision,
not
Sean.
more people don't do this. I know what's his name, Beats, Dr. Dre and Jimmy Iovine, whatever his name is.
Yes, Jimmy Iovine.
Aren't they
Interscope
doing
Records,
a school together? Aren't they creating a school together? Should I heard that? Did I make that up?
No, I think I've seen some articles.
LeBron had I Promise
think that
school, and these are fantastic ideas. Like any type of their change that takes away from the traditional way of teaching is usually a step forward.
So I'll do that here, but we are working on more of like a mass scale educational type system. But in the beginning, it'll be supplemental to somebody that's going to regular school because there's going to be a lot of people that can't. Maybe that'll change with some of these new credits or whatever. But I know
Supplemental learning on top of what they're
learning. So I think that in the beginning, it'll have to be, and we'll make a whole homeschool type program. But for the people that can't do that just yet, it'll be in supplemental to their traditional
Absolutely.
education.
There's a lot of softwares
Yeah.
out there. Like, for example, Khan Academy is open to all parents. If you're listening out there, sign your child to that.
And
It's
what
very
explain
adaptive.
that? Yeah, explain that.
So it's khanacademy.com. You log in and your child will take a diagnostics test to see where they're at. And then their geared learning is towards them. And social
See,
studies,
that's what I feel
ELA.
like we need more of because I feel like at 16, for me, it
Adaptive
was 16.
learning, yeah.
I have to know where I want to college, what I want to do, what my major is going to be when I have no real life applied experience. So you got the teacher's student job after you graduated or close to graduation in college to figure out, do I really want to do this? I got an education degree. Do I like this? I feel like there's so much pressure on juniors, like sophomores and juniors, about getting accepted to the college they want to go to and picking out their life career with no set
we do, and
skills
we
or
even have
education,
that in
extra
our-
education.
But that's why nobody knows what they want to do because they have no idea how life works. Like there's not, you can't even
must
blame
do
them.
it.
Yeah, you can't blame them. It's like, and then so that's kind of why they wander around college. Oh, I might want to do this. I might take this. But if you had been teaching them, a lot of these life skills since they were 8, 9 years old,
Yeah. Which
they would
they're
have a
capable
lot
of
better
learning.
idea, I think, what they want to do in life.
So how soon do you as an educator recommend that parents start doing this supplementary
It was early on.
education? Like elementary school,
So, for
intermediate?
example, my daughter is about to be a year this week. She doesn't know anything, but she knows how to flip a book. So we've put a book in her hand. I mean, obviously, we're both teachers. We built a library for her. That was our biggest dream come true, have a library for our child. But you have to be very intentional. You cannot... Have you ever went to the post office or have you ever went to the DMV?
I deal with the post office every day.
But you expect your kids to go to a government-funded place to have a better
That's
experience?
a really good analogy.
So you have to take control of that. And I think parents, they got a real eye-opener when the COVID happened that, hey, listen, like my kid is not, now you're seeing your kid compared to other kids and you're noticing they're falling behind. So, just hold kids accountable and then have expectations for them. And they will rise to those expectations. So let me tell you one of those things. I was the part of the GT committee, stands for gifted and talented. I hate that term, gifted and talented. It tells like this kid is better than that kid. And those are kids who critically think faster. They can...
It just means they're excelling in their school.
They're excelling, yeah.
That's it.
And then so they have to take a test called a COGAT test. It's a national test. But then you have standards, like if they got 90% above on their state test or whatever, they can qualify. So my job was to find out who these kids are. And of course, we get flooded with applications from parents, but then we eliminate those applications by kids who are below 90. All of those kids have a survey the parent completes. And the survey was, how are your kids compared to their peers? How are your kids thinking outside the box? And every parent that wrote, my kid is excelling, my kid is amazing, my kid is the best, their kid was not gifted. Every parent who wrote, my kid is the smartest kid I know. Oh, no, they're not good enough.
It's like having a dad for a coach.
Yeah, exactly. My kid
Push
is
them
below
harder.
their peers. Those kids were high achievers. Those kids were GT. So I was like, wait a minute. Like,
Never
to this
good enough,
day,
keep
my
pushing.
dad never told me he's proud of me. And it really bugged me for a long time. I heard him once when I was 28 and we had a successful restaurant and he said, oh, I'm proud of him. And like I was telling chef, like, he's never said that to me. Like I'm 28 years old. I've never heard my dad
He didn't
say
want you to
that.
get complacent though. He wanted
Absolutely.
you to keep
So
trying.
then it made me realize, wait a minute, like I've always been trying to prove that I could do something with my life with him. When I won Teacher of the Year, I was like, hey, Dad, I got Teacher of the Year. He's like, and he just turned around like he did. But I noticed, hey, these kids whose parents are not saying you're the best kid ever are achieving because they continue to strive. But if you say you're the best,
They're setting the bar as high as
they're setting the bar high. And the higher you set the bar, so I would tell parents, set high bars, be involved. There's a lot of like Khan Academy, there is brainpop.com, homeschooling, super teachers worksheet. So these are all websites you can go to ensure that you're getting, and check out the TA website. There's the TA shows the test that the kids are going to take from 3rd grade and up and see what they're expected to learn. But ultimately be very involved in
That's
your
great
education.
knowledge, and I'm sure a lot of parents already know that because my kids are not of that age. But what can you prepare your kids for at home to make sure they're really landing where they need to be?
And at the end of the day, the best way to teach kids how to critically think is to read. And the way for them to read is you read and you model that behavior. So if they have a book in their hand and you take away that iPad, and once again, at a charter school, our parents come in with cars. So I see every parent. So there's that relationship that I build and then ensure that they're holding accountable and ensuring every kid that gets off that car with a book in their hand has a higher grade in school. Every kid that puts that phone away or that laptop away is struggling in school. So it's just, the expectations you have to set high for them. And no matter what it is, they're going to rise up to it.
So I want to know, what do you feel like, if there's a teacher watching out here today, what do you feel like, because you can't disrupt this education system or the healthcare system overnight. It's not going to happen overnight. What is one thing that you would recommend to a teacher they could apply to their classroom tomorrow?
I would say research and continue to learn. Research, for example, when I go to YouTube and search, read the book that I read that Teach Like
Your Hair's on Fire?
Teach Like Your Hair's on Fire. There's a great book called Teach Like a Champion. They have 3 versions now, and they went into a lot of the low economic schools and see what teachers are working, and they have a lot of steps in there, and we teach that to our teachers too. So Teach Like a Champion, Teach Like Your Hair's on Fire. If you're a teacher out there, continue. I mean, I am very happy with my life, and I have a good work balance, but it's not easy, but it will. Don't ask for a easy life, but ask to be stronger so you can be a great role model. And I've had that opportunity because those kids molded me, even though I say I'm a refugee, but those tough kids that really need me to be there made me the teacher that I am. And I continually got 100% on the STAR test and 100% growth. But I truly like that because now we're incentivizing high performing teachers, and that's how you keep them, because ultimately all the research that goes into reform, the main difference in kids' education is that teacher. But at the same time, all the blame falls on them too.
Definitely inspirational. I just feel like if you had the right like curriculum and like financial education, just along with like sales and communication, all that stuff, and you had that along, and you had your passion and like your knowledge, God, like you would make a huge difference. Yeah,
right there.
Just that.
If every teacher could do what you're doing in the classroom.
Well, giving good teachers like yourself the tools to go and actually teach these kids to, when they are 18, they actually know, have life skills along with, reading, writing, math. But I just feel like the first half of the day, I mean, pretty much you can learn anything you need to in like 2-3 hours, kind of like your.
Yes.
What were you going to say about Finland? I want to hear.
Finland does that. So they have short classes. They're the #1 performer when it comes to all of education in kids. So before coming here,
so it should just go. You just use the data, and it's like, okay, if that's what they're doing, that makes sense. That's what they're doing,
right? Exactly. So let's do what's working. So they are leading the world in that. And
but people can't afford daycare here is a problem. So they get out of school too early. That means you're doubling the amount of daycare.
So
and that's a problem.
Our school tried to do 3-day weekends. The biggest pushback was from parents. They didn't want that. And obviously that's the reason they don't have daycare. People are working. But Finland, their system has worked. And I did a lot of research before coming here because they hold their teachers at a high regard, like doctors or lawyers. They have a hard vetting. You have to have a master's degree to be a teacher. They let teachers decide what to teach, but they kind of ease off. They have video games in the classroom. The kids play. Piaget is an educational theorist, and he said kids learn through play. And that's what Montessori ties into.
Yeah.
But they have to put things together and analyze and synthesize things on a daily basis to get it. And financial literacy is the one thing that we've kept from them intentionally. And you wonder why, and then I'm a victim of it myself. Then when I saw that kid buying a house, and I was like, man, he has an asset. I need to buy an asset. I can't teach this information without not do it, applying it, because it obviously works. And then going through the process of, buying investment property, and then saying, like you said, well, this could have been taught in school, and I didn't have to go pay some coach, a whole bunch of money to teach me as something that easily could have been taught in school. And
or having those as an opportunity as electives to take
or an elective. Yeah, absolutely. Like so the 4 subjects that we have that continues from kinder to 12th grade is social studies, science, English learning, and English learning arts, and math. If you put money in there, I had a 3rd grader, this is what influenced the financial literacy. I had a 3rd grader, and there was a quarter, and she didn't know what that was. And so, you can start, a quarter was.
Oh, a quarter.
And so if you started early on and money being a subject, and
they'll be comfortable with it, but they'll be
you don't have
comfortable
finance
with it.
until college. I mean, that's not even an elective.
Yeah, that just, it goes back to
finance should be basic 9th grade.
Goes back to the saying about the nation of workers and not thinkers. Yeah.
Like, why didn't anybody teach me about, this morning I was just reading about a gentleman who started investing at 18. He's 37 now, and he's accumulated $6 million just putting $500 away in the stock market, or following an ETF or a S&P 500 portfolio. Why isn't that not taught to our kids? Why is our kids not capable of, as soon as their first job, they could put some money away in a Roth IRA, an IRA, and that's the greatest advice I give to seniors now. I'm like, create a Roth IRA as soon as you get a job. Put small money there. Put it automatic, and then forget about it. Mm-hmm. By 30, you're financially independent, and you can pursue whatever you want.
Well, I said something on social media about it, and one of my followers, her husband is a teacher at the high school I went to, Clearbrook High School, and they said that now they do have a life skills class.
Okay.
That is something that the school I went to is now offering. So I don't know if that's across the board, if that's just an elective, or if that's mandatory in Texas, but that's the kind of stuff I'm like, well, at least we're going in the right direction.
Yeah, the skills that they need, like compassion and curiosity and hard work and perseverance and grit. Those are the things the skills that we need to teach, which is ultimately integrity and character.
But he says that he has a really hard time getting people to stay attentive in class, because when they start getting to like finance numbers, interest rates, taxes, or whatever, the kids become very uninterested. But because we're not starting it off early enough.
Yes, they have to do it.
Gamified it a little bit.
They have to go through the process, build a fake house.
Applying it like you. Yeah,
apply ultimately and create it, because retention is not the way to teach our kids anymore. And
reading a book at the front of the class.
Absolutely. I don't have to, like, I had an angry email the other day, and I didn't even respond to it. I copied and pasted. I said, apologize, make them feel better, and make them happy. And then the email generated to this parent. And usually it would take me 45 minutes to write an email that's very understanding of their feelings and ensure that I hear them. But ultimately, like, it's a waste of my time trying to appease this parent. But ChatGPT did that. So like now for example, if I asked you like do a long division or multiplication, you pull out your computer, there's no shame in that. So why are we shaming our kids for using, ChatGPT or any other AI?
Yeah, Sean does it all the time at work. I'm just now starting to bring it into some things that I do. But yeah, I think that's where the direction of where we're going. So like you said, why not do that? Have shortcuts so we can just be more productive and get more things out of the way.
And then we're wasting too much time on skills that they're not necessary.
Yes.
That's my biggest, I think, gripe or pushback is like, they're doing nothing all day. Like, I mean, not nothing, but pretty much nothing. Something they could learn in 2 to 3 hours. And really it just needs to be English or writing, reading, and math. And then the rest of it needs to be like communication
and those
and life skills and a little bit of finance. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And then, like you said, like grit and determination and stuff like that.
It's just it's because they're changing classes too many times a day, and we're wasting time, like 5 minutes here, 10 minutes here, just a lot of wasted time throughout the day.
There is a lot of wasted time throughout the day. And once again, we got to keep them in for 8 hours. So
find things to do to fill up the time.
They're trying to fill up the time. Yeah. But I think if you truly have an inquiry-based learning, and here's the problem with the state. In order to pass the state certification, they teach us in college that imagine a perfect classroom scenario where everything is met. There's no kid crying, this kid had no breakfast, but that's not real. So we're setting our teachers to go into the profession not ready. And then they say, oh, if a bird flies by out the window, let's talk about airplanes. And they're like, no, I can't. I want to talk about that. I want to teach you about that your curiosity is led there. However, I got to get back to this curriculum because my job is dependent dependent on that. And once again, they won't fire you, but districts have this term, some states call it dancing of the lemons or the turkey trot. Well, I know I have a bad teacher, but I can't fire them, and you have a bad teacher and you can't fire them. We'll just move around, and districts do that, and they move,
Kind of like a union, having a union.
Yeah.
and then hopefully that one bad teacher you have is not as bad as the one I have.
It goes back to the post office and the DMV. It's just like, oh, just a bunch of workers and they can't fire them. And
It's hard to make change.
Yeah. And you get the worst service in the world. So
Run it like a business.
Absolutely. Worst service in the world because it's not incentivized. I went to a Michelin star restaurant in Tokyo. My first Michelin star ever before it became a thing in Houston now. I had the worst service ever. And I, coming from the hospitality industry, I was like, this is a Michelin star. This girl has not been here. I haven't seen her. And then later on, I found out, oh, you don't tip them. They don't work for tips. They work hourly. So there's no incentive to ensure that good service is there so she can pay. So there's not incentive for good performing teachers. Back in 2008 in DC, this chancellor DC has the lowest rate of, in America, has the lowest rate of literacy. And this chancellor came in, her last name is Ree.
That's shocking.
And 12% is what their literacy level is at. And this Ree wanted to get rid of, this lady wanted to get rid of unions, but she couldn't budge because there's interest groups and, there's a lot of laws in place. For example, Pearson, they're the ones that pass out that testing. So they make sure that law doesn't go away because they're selling to each kid that goes to school. So that's money. So they're gonna make sure the laws are provided that we continue to standardize testing. But this lady, Ree,
Sounds like vaccines.
Exactly. She wanted to get rid of the teacher union and keep good teachers and fire them if they were not performing. So she gave them, so she couldn't budge them. And then she reached out and said, if you want tenure and you don't want to get fired, you can make $54,000 a year. But if you don't want tenure, but you are on a yearly contract, and however, you can make up to $130,000 a year, a little bit more than the twice of money. And nobody voted for that. They'd rather be happy with their $54,000.
the guaranteed amount.
Guaranteed amount. And so that's the challenge that we see in reform, that it's really hard to shake up things.
I'm curious to see where the homeschool stuff
takes
us.
Yeah, it'll be interesting.
It's a move forward. Of course, like I said, any idea is great until it's put into application. But I would love to also build something for parents to take away. So Classroom Economy is the website that you can go to. Download these jobs that you can give out to every classroomeconomy.com.
You should create this. This is your idea you should create a website.
I've had a lot of ideas.
You're creating curriculum for these homeschool teachers, homeschool parents to keep their kids involved throughout the day.
Absolutely. And I think once I became a dad, my whole energy that I wanted to put it to youth and then change them and mold them, I said, you know what? Let's just focus on this little baby right here.
Your own.
Yeah. Because ultimately, what I learned in the education system is good parents make good kids and bad parents continue on that cycle of, and then, educated, smart people are not having children. And those who have low economic status, those who are struggling are having multiple children. So the literacy rate is going lower and lower. And ultimately, what I've noticed in education is just good parents have good kids, and parents who are struggling, their childs have much more trauma, if not double the trauma they're dealing with.
I know that, Sean, sometimes people misinterpret what he's saying. He doesn't hate teachers. He doesn't hate school. He just thinks it needs major.
I actually love education in general. It's just the right education because you have to have it. I mean, but that's all it is like once somebody has the right information, they can go and be way more successful at life just in general. And the problem is no one's getting the right information. So the traditional school system is what I guess I'm pushing back on a lot. And then definitely college, just because kind of the way technology has shifted, the way the internet brought so much opportunity, there's just no ROI on school. And so for somebody to go and, waste 4 years, or it's not going to really even use their degree. And even if they get
15 years of debt after that.
Even if they get a degree, they're in debt and their job doesn't pay enough to support themselves. And man, if they have a family, I mean, it's even worse, right? So you get stuck in this system where they can't even get any better. They don't know anything.
So I think what both of you guys are saying is supplement early enough to where your child is showing interest in other subjects, and supplement them with real world stuff
things, and have them do
early.
It. And then there's another term, helicopter parents. There's a new one called lawnmower parents. You are trying to they're taking away all adversity away from their child, and you're hurting your child from growth.
So, we get a little bit nervous. I definitely get a little bit nervous because our kid is growing up in a totally different lifestyle than we had. Than we all had. And so, you get scared that like he's not going to have that same determination and motivation.
Your
so I'm
kid
trying to
will.
do. Oh no, I know. I'm I'm trying to do everything I can because I'd be really sad if he grew up and had his hand out. I mean, that would be he would have no purpose in life, and I feel like I failed for sure if he does that. And so
I think
I'm
you're
not
on the
gonna let
right
that
track.
happen. Yeah.
And honestly, I've known you. I've followed your social media, and at the bar, we talk more than. But it's really been great to get into your mind, and I think that you inspire me every day when I see you on that cold plunge at 5:40.
So gross. I don't get inspired by that shit.
It's in my
Hell no.
It's in my box. I was gonna buy it for a Black Friday, but I didn't. But I will later after my daughter's birthday. But I want you to say you have much more of an impact than you think you might. And then sometimes I don't think kids are watching me at school, but then seeing what you're doing, very inspirational. And I know that, you've been recently getting it, but you're gonna get much more because what you're providing and what you're giving to our community and our nation is beyond thankless. But you are going to change lives. You're changing my life, so thank you for that.
Well, I think doing
really
more than
that.
just like selling courses, you know what I mean? Being able to provide a little bit more snippets of people who have done it before and interviewing so many different types of people. Not everyone that we interview is, a multimillionaire or billionaire, whatever. We like to interview different types of people so people can feel that they can, be on the same page and understand and grow in the position that they're at and understand the importance of what we do and the way we shape the mind of our children is what they grow up to become.
Absolutely.
So I think all of that is important and leads to the success formula of you telling your story here and seeing how much you care about your job as a teacher when not everyone does. But I think also coming from where you came from, your parents taking the great leap to do something different so you guys would have a better life, and then applying that and then making sure you're continuing the cycle,
absolutely,
of raising them to be great humans when they grow up. So
yeah, hopefully we'll see some reform over this, next 5 or 10 years, but I'm going to try to create my own. We'll see what happens.
And I think that's what I've learned too. You want change, you gotta do it yourself.
Do it yourself.
Yeah.
Actually, just because I made so many mistakes when I was, 17 to 20 years old, I would love to help those kids at some point one day. Like when you said the kids that were, in a lower economic school, it's like, man, I could probably turn those kids faster into successful people than I could.
Came from those schools. You came from that school.
Yeah. And but I know what they're thinking and I know what they're going through, not to the point of not having food, but we didn't grow up that poor. But I just know how their mind works. I know, especially as a young man, and I do think I could probably help those kids the most because, believe it or not, they have drive and really like some motivation to get out of what they're doing. So if you just give them the right information,
just need a right role model.
If you give the right information and, like you said, the right influence, they will 100% change really
just like
fast.
your kids that you had at the first school that you went to work at to where they're at now, and they're 20s now.
Yeah, now they're still calling you and stuff. I mean, you had some type of impact on them. They
Yeah, and it's been fantastic. My dad would even say like, "Hey, is Chris coming for Thanksgiving?" Like, I hadn't seen him, so it's been an amazing journey. Something that it made me the man I am today. And I was just a kid coming out of college thinking you can change the world, but I thought that if I could change one kid and let them know that they're not alone in this. And you see that, and you see the kids coming back. And one of them recently found me on LinkedIn and wrote me a huge email. And I was having a rough day, but he, had me in tears.
Like, this is why I do it.
Yeah,
right here.
Cool.
Yeah. So that the ROI in our education takes a long time. It's an investment you make on our kids. It's a long time to return, and that's one of the hard things about the American culture is we are instant gratification. That's why we don't like soccer. We want things now, and then one of the things we don't focus on our kids because the investment that we get returned from them, it's going to be from 20 years from now. I think it's also the
internet. I think that's hard because people see everything on the internet. I want that now. You know what I mean? It makes everything in your mind just moves faster.
And companies
and patience doesn't exist.
They plan on ensuring that consumerism is vast, and with the ad. I watched Cartoon Network the other day, and they had these toys constantly thrown at the screen. I was like, oh, I didn't realize this, but this is their target. It's the kids. So
of course.
Well, thanks again for coming over today.
My pleasure.
Spending your afternoon with us. No, we love it.
No. This was great. It was inspirational for me too. I know you go above and beyond what a lot of teachers do, and then you're also trying to be creative on introducing like life skills and finance and stuff in the classroom, which is what everybody's lacking.
Awesome. Yeah.
Well, thanks again.
Future looks bright.
All right, man.
Thanks.